I'm ready when you are.
Yeah, I'm good. Just go.
Kyle, one of the problems with growing a team is often about scaling. And as more and more people join the team, it gets harder to support more and more people. And so we built out something that's pretty unique and pretty cool that I want to talk about kind of why we did it, what we did, and kind of how we keep it going.
Yeah, I'm excited to share this one. Our team has grown substantially in recent years. We're now hovering in the neighborhood of 110, 120 agents at Whissel Realty Group here at EXP. And as we've continued to grow, we've realized we have to have multiple layers of leadership built in order to manage a team of this size. And so today we're going to dive into that newest layer of leadership called our Agent Board of Advisors. So let's jump into it.
Let's go.
Cool. Welcome to the Whissel Way podcast. My name is Kyle Whissel, your host with Whissel Realty Group here at EXP.
And I'm Bryan Koci.
The goal of the show is give you the tools, techniques, and tactics. Go out there and crush it in your business. The way that we like to do that is to answer the questions that you have for us. So if you ever have a question you want to have us answer on the show, you can always go to thewhisselway.com, ask us questions on there, subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel, join our referral network for all the people leaving California. Also, you can get dialed in with our private Facebook group and email newsletter where we share a lot of tips and tricks of the things that we are working on internally with our team. So you would have probably heard about this one already if you were on there. So all of that at thewhisselway.com. And if you want to get dialed in and really level up your content creation as we move into 2025, Bryan and I have been creating content together for 10 years now. Audio, video, social, the whole nine. So if you want to learn to podcast, you want to learn to start doing better video, better social, all that stuff is at thewhisselway.com. All right, let's roll.
Very cool. So first, why don't you explain what the Agent Board of Advisors is, and then we'll talk about why we ended up building it.
Yeah, so the Agent Board of Advisors is a group. We currently have 6 people that were interviewed and hand selected to be on our board of advisors. And the main goal with having a board of advisors is to have something that's kind of two-way. One, so that we can relay information through the board of advisors who then can take that information and relay it out to the team. Also to intake information that comes from the team through the board of advisors into us. So kind of having an inflow and outflow of information for the things that we need to know. Sometimes there's, things that are being said around the office that we don't know. We're kind of, blind to those things, but the board is hearing it. And so the board can take that information that they're hearing. They can relay that stuff to us. So maybe there's, a problem with something. People are frustrated with something. We want to know about that. Maybe people are loving something when we want to hear about that too. So we can do more of it. So really important to get that kind of thing. Also, the board is set up to help take some of the load off of my plate and off of the rest of the leadership's team plates by hosting some of the different activities that we have on our team. So we do huddles multiple times per week where me or my leadership team or now our Agent Board of Advisors is pouring into the rest of the company. So we do these little 15-minute motivational messages at the first thing in the morning to kind of kick things off and get people inspired and get them going. Then we jump into role play where our board of advisors is typically stepping up, kind of making sure that that's all happening the way that it's supposed to. We also do role play in person on a weekly basis. So we like to role play our listing presentations, our buyer consultations, open houses, negotiations, all that stuff. So we role play that in the office on a weekly basis. We have 4 offices now. So making sure that we have coverage at all 4 offices every single week. They're a big part of making that happen. And then the last thing is deal doctoring. So we're trying to get away from our agents constantly posting in Slack, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do this? Instead of just having nonstop Slack messages all day, having all of them come to a deal doctoring session every day at 1:00. And so I host 1 day a week. The board of advisors hosts the other 4 days of the week. And that's an opportunity for the agents when they have a question, they can just now bring it there at 1:00. Because the thing is, if one agent has a question about a particular scenario, other agents are going to have that same question at some point in their career. So it's one of those where we can take the answer and instead of just giving it in a one-to-one format, give it in a group format where everybody's going to get that benefit. There you go. Podcast done.
Is it my turn to talk yet? You mentioned there are 6. Where did you come up with that number?
This is new. We just rolled this out a few months ago, so we felt like that was an adequate number to give us the coverage that we needed for all the things we mentioned, the role plays, the deal doctorings, and all of that stuff. So we wanted to make sure that we had adequate enough coverage to cover all of those without overwhelming them where they're having to host these things, 2-3 times a week. So we felt that that was a good number. And then we just had a ton of agents want to be on the board of advisors. So we put that out to the team and open it up. And we put some minimum standards in place as far as production and whatnot to make sure that we have people that are qualified. And then we sat down and did interviews, and we interviewed each person one by one. I think we had around 12 or 13 people, interview. And so our director of sales, Rachel, comes from a teaching background. So she's very big on what's known as a rubric. So we had a series of questions that we asked, and then we all scored them. And that way we had a basis for comparison. So after, when you interview 12 or 13 people, you don't want to just go off gut feel. You want to go off a score. So we interviewed all of the people, and then we sat down and we ultimately picked the 6 that had the highest scores from those interviews. And the interviews were, some of it was questionings, and then some of it was actual role-playing deal doctoring, because I want to see how people handle those deal doctoring situations, because that is an art to handle deal doctoring. So wanted to make sure that they knew how to, we picked the best people possible to handle those things.
I want to dive in a little bit more about the interview. Do you know how many questions, or can you give us an example of some of the questions?
I think that there's probably like 6 to 8 questions, if I remember. It's simple stuff like, why do you want to be on the board of advisors? To role playing like a very particular scenario of, I have, it's my first buyer I've worked with. The seller requested highest and best offers. I don't even know what that means. What do I do? And then role playing through that scenario with them. So some are, more of your traditional type interview questions, and some are more the role play, because I want to see what they've got. And, some of the people would just literally hear that answer and be like, this is what you do. It's like, okay, I know you're a high D, but like, calm down. You got to ask some questions. And some of our team might be watching this video right now. So some of you guys that maybe didn't make it and you're watching this video, you got to ask more questions. That's one of the keys to deal doctoring, is you really have to understand the entire situation. Who are we representing? How did we get to the situation that we're in? What's our client's motivation? What's the other client's motivation? What's our relationship with the agent? Having a good understanding of exactly where we're at, how we got there, and where do we want to get to before we give a response and give some advice on how to handle a situation. So looking for people who kind of grasp that and understand how to ask the right questions so that they can give the right response, because sometimes the ultra high Ds, they just throw a response out there that's completely irrelevant or it's wrong, and we want to avoid that.
How long does an agent have to be on this agent board of advisors?
So first round, we rolled out in Q4, and we wanted to just run this first 3 months kind of as a test to make sure that like this all works and everything is smooth, which it's gone great. And then we ideally will just have a new board on an annual basis. So we'll be opening up interviews again here shortly, and we'll go through a new interview process, and and we might end up with the same 6. We might, have some changes. We'll see. Everybody I feel like did a really good job that was selected. So if somebody's going to come in and take their spot, like they say in boxing and UFC, if you want to be the champ, you got to beat the champ. So if somebody wants to take one of those spots, they're going to really have to come in and impress us, because the people that are in there now, we feel like all did a good job. And one of the things we found is that some people are stronger in some areas than they are in others. So another one of the things I didn't mention earlier is like, we need help in Slack. When people do have questions, like it can't rely on, me or you, or right. We need more people that are in the field that can help out. So that's also one thing. So we have, of those 6, there's 3 or 4 that are like really active in Slack. And there's a couple that aren't very active in Slack. Then the deal doctoring, some people are great at deal doctoring. It's super creative. Some are not so good at it. The in-person role plays, like there's a person who's not in Slack at all, but in-person role play, arguably the best, right? So it's like, we understand we're not going to get everything from everybody, but as long as, we get people that have their strengths and weaknesses in those different areas, together collectively, that group of 6 is ridiculously strong.
Would you be interested in adding a 7th or an 8th?
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah. There's no set number, right? I mean, we just made this up. This just felt like the right number. The biggest thing to me is that we have enough people to service the agent count that we have. So making sure that we can give the responses that they in Slack in a timely manner, that we have enough people to host all the different role plays and huddles and deal doctoring sessions. So it's a function of of, what is the demand and do we have enough supply to meet that?
Now, these are all reasons why it's great for us, right? As a company, as a group, it's great for us because they're helping in Slack, they're doing more on deal doctoring, they're doing role plays, they're doing all these things for us. And they're independent contractors. We don't have to pay them extra. They're not getting a stipend for this. Why do agents want to do this?
One, they want to give back to the company that got them to where they are in their business and in their life. So I appreciate the heck out of them for that. I know there's organizations I'm a part of that I choose to give back, right? eXp Realty, like I love eXp. It's changed my freaking life. I'm happy to give back to that organization because it's changed my family's trajectory for generations, and I want to do my part to give back. And I think our agents are similar in that regard, that they want to give back. So that's part of it. Part of it is also being seen as, the upper tier in this company, right? As the company gets bigger, you want to stand out from the crowd. And this is a way to do that and get extra recognition. So they have unique email signatures. They have unique, I don't know what the frames, we'll call them, on their social profiles. So, and then they'll have recognition when we have our big holiday party where all the spouses and significant others are there. So there's a recognition side of it. There's a give back side of it. And then third is I do virtually no production anymore. So anytime I have a client that comes into me or I have a referral that comes into me, those are all going to the board of advisors.
And they also have less expectations put on them, correct?
Yeah, so we're really big. If you've watched any of our previous episodes, we're really big on expectations from our agents. How many role plays do they get on? How many huddles do they attend? Open houses, all these activities. These guys, because they're hosting a lot of these things, we give them a pass where they're not held to the same level that other agents in the company are. And it's because a lot of times they're hosting these things. So because of their willingness to step up and, give back to the company, we take some of the pressure off on all those expectations for them.
What would you say are some of the things that we did while rolling this out? And again, it's in its infancy, and we're having 3 of the agent board of advisors on the podcast. I've already filmed them. Cody's went out last week.
Schedule the other 3 too.
Well, I'll get there.
I'm taking some vacation this fourth quarter, dude. So you're going to need to get some more people in here.
I know. So we already did Cody last week. We got Jen and Carly coming up, and the other 3 will get in here as well. If looking back on it, what are some of the things that you wish we would have done differently, or some blind spots that we hit? Let's talk about our failures, mostly yours.
I mean, the hardest part has just been having to tell people they didn't make it. Like, that's tough. People that really wanted and put a lot of energy and effort into it, and having to tell them, like, we don't have enough, you were not selected. Like, that sucks. That gives people a negative feeling, right? Whether they were, 1 point away from making it or 10 points away from making it, rejection is just one of those things a lot of us don't like. Not that you have any problem with it. You love it.
I've never been rejected.
So I think that's an unintended consequence. And even now, as we come back to re-interview, there's the potential that somebody might be told no for a second time. There's also the potential that somebody will be told, like, thank you for your service, but you've been replaced. And those are some tough conversations. So I think that's probably the biggest negative so far. Outside of that, I mean, it's worked phenomenally well. Like, I feel like it's one of the better things we've implemented in 2024, just to continue the growth that we have. I mean, by the time this year is done, we're going to sell over 800 homes, over $600 million worth of real estate. It doesn't happen without having leadership like this. And so to have not only like the corporate leadership, but also to have the agent leadership, I think is really essential to continue the growth trajectory that we're on.
I want to bounce back to the interviews. You talked about some of the questions we asked and how to do it. What did some of the agents do? Because that really stood out where you said, now that is how you interview. Because I know you can take some of the, whether you're interviewing for the agent board of advisors or you're interviewing for a listing or to work with a buyer, what are some of the things that people did that you go, wow, no one else did that? Or I'm glad you used your skills from here and put it here.
Yeah, I mean, one that jumps out, only one out of the 12 or 13 that interviewed sent a high note in advance of the interview, which we use high note heavily whenever we're going on an appointment with a buyer, with a seller. I met with a developer the other day. Like, I sent a high note in advance of that meeting So having something where you're kind of priming the meeting and setting yourself apart from the competition is huge. So somebody using High Note, I think was just a massive one. And then the other one, kind of circling back to what I was saying earlier, just the ones that stood out when it came to deal dockering was the people who really ask questions. Like, it's the most important thing, because you have like 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen twice as much as you talk. So when it comes to deal doctoring, if you could actually do damage if you don't ask enough questions, because you don't understand the situation. You might give bad advice because you didn't ask enough questions to understand things. So that would be another one that like really, really stood out. And then just the why question. Some people are like, oh, I thought it'd be fun. Like, okay. Whereas others had, a very heartfelt response that you could tell was genuine. And they were truly passionate and committed, and it meant something to them. So I would say those would be like 3 things to me that like were difference makers.
One last thing before we get into our Whissel widget of the week. If someone that is listening wants to implement this in their business with their team, what's the number one piece of advice you'd give them?
I'm trying to think of if there's like, when is the time is I think the important thing. I think
I'll ask that question next then.
Yeah, I think I would say probably once you get past like 10 agents, even if you only have like 1 or 2 people, but you want to elevate your top people. I think it's important that you elevate people, and 2, that you have that feedback loop to and from the rest of the team. So I think getting it implemented once you surpass like 10 agents is probably around the right point to do this. And then you'll just add on to the size relevant to your team. So for us currently, it's roughly like a 20-to-1 ratio. So I don't know if that's the right ratio. Again, we'll figure this thing out. As we go back through the interviews again, do we add 1, subtract 1? We'll see. I don't know that answer yet, but we are going to re-interview. I know that everybody who's on currently wants to stay on for the full year in 2025. So we'll see how it goes when we open it up for other interviews. Yeah,
and I think the big issue of how many agents, like you said, we have 20-to-1, but we also have a lot of other resources, past meetings recorded. We talked about our Trainual, which is our learning management system, where we have so many questions answered already. So where for someone like us, it could be 20-to-1 or 30-to-1 with a big team, where if you have less of that documentation, maybe you're looking more at a 5-to-1, 10-to-1.
Yeah, one other thing I'll mention, another adjustment we're making is, in order for somebody to interview, they have to have been a mentor for 6 months. So that's another thing that we're adding as we come into round 2 of interviews, is you have to have shown that you can mentor people, that you like to give back, like you have the right heart. Because some people came out of nowhere to interview and have never done anything for the company. And then it showed in their interview too, that they weren't like passionate about it. So people that are passionate about giving back and helping others, I think that's a really important quality. So as we go into round 2, that is one of the requirements, is that they've been a mentor for at least 6 months. And I know there's people that want to interview that haven't done it. So what that'll also do is it'll drive them to be mentors first, so they can kind of prove themselves as good mentors. Because that was another criteria when we were deciding, as we got down to the wire of, who's in, who's out. We looked at who's mentored in the past and who's thrived as mentors. And that was also part of our decision-making process as we got real tight with the points where everybody was within a few. That was a factor that came into things.
Very cool.
So it's nice to see people who've already been stepping up, not like pick me and then I'll step up. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, there's a lot of advice. So yeah, especially those of you guys that are running big teams, like 50 plus people, like you must do this. Like this should be something you implement before 2024 is done, and have it in place for 2025. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, hopefully you got some value out of today's episode. If you did, if you're listening on a podcast platform, make sure to hook us up with a review. It means a lot to us. Even if it's one sentence, just write a quick review, your biggest takeaway from today, and hit that subscribe button. And if you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell if you want to get notified when we drop new episodes. Make sure to hit the like button. That actually really helps the algorithm on YouTube. And if you have a question, throw it in the comment section. Brian and I personally respond to all of those questions. Before we wrap today, we want to share something we refer to as our Whissel widget of the week. This is something we utilize in our business. It saves us time, makes us more money, or just helps us have a little bit more fun.
Mine helps us have more fun. I saw this, one of the TikTok creators I follow actually made a game, and I'm not big into games. I get too competitive. I don't like it. But it's a little game. It's a bunch of different cards, and you have a little spinner thing, and they have things that you can do with your family. And so it's like there's 4 different categories. One is like sing it. One is, it's like a charades type thing. One's act it out. One is find it. And so we bought this, and we've used it with my family a couple times. And it's fun. I've got a 4-year-old. I have an 8-year-old. I have a 3-month-old. He doesn't play. But it's called Family Face Off. I think it was $20 on Amazon. And it's just a lot of fun. It's fun to do together. It's fun to have the kids work towards it. And it's also a good learning opportunity because Elliot, my 4-year-old, gets upset when he doesn't get it right. And my 8-year-old does. And so we get to teach him disappointment and losing and winning and all that sort of stuff. So it's called Family Face Off. It's a lot of fun.
I like it.
Yeah.
Mine is a service that can come in handy in a couple scenarios. One, if you get too drunk and you need, you don't want to Uber home and then have to go deal with getting your car the next day, which can be a pain in the butt. This service is called Driver, and they can come pick you up and drive you home in your own car, which is cool. So they basically come as a pair, right? And one person hops out, they drive you and your drunk ass home. So you get home with your car and you don't have to go pick it up in the morning. And then they obviously hop back in their other car and leave. But also just if you need a driver for the day, maybe you want to go, do a pub crawl or you want to go wine tasting or something. They can come and just drive you around in your car. And you could have a DD for the day so that you don't get yourself in trouble. So it's Driver, Driver. So also I have a code. If you guys want to hook up on it, send me a DM and I'll send you a code. You get a little discount on the first usage.
Very cool.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Whissel Way podcast. Again, if you want to stay connected, hit us up on Instagram @Bryan Koci, @Kyle Whissel. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Whissel Way podcast.